We spoke previously about reading graphs and how the different curves on the different channels relate to something's position over time or its rotation and so on, and how we use this smoothness to try and make sure that our motions are happening in a nice, natural, smooth manner. In some cases, what we're really concerned with, of course, is the speed of the item moving through our scene. And it can be really helpful in plotting out our motion to be able to work things in the sense of how fast they're travelling. If you're keying a walk cycle, for instance, and your character appears to be moving at 26 miles an hour, you've probably got something wrong. If you look at the channels here in the graph editor and right-click, you'll find that there's a couple of interesting functions here, which we didn't mention previously in the graph editor videos, which is show velocity and show speed. First of all, show velocity shows the velocity for the selected channel. So if I turn that on, we see that we get this little ghosty green curve there. That's showing me the velocity of the Y channel here. If I go over to Z, there's nothing appeared, so I have to turn on show velocity, and we see we get the velocity of the Z channel appearing here. Show speed is a little different as it's taking into account all three channels. As such, we get this grey ghosted line here, and that is accounting for the X, Y and Z position change, displaying the overall speed of the item. Notice, of course, the place where these draw in the graph editor. Our positions are, of course, marked in meters, and you can see, of course, that the values of the velocity and speed curves can be drawn to positions on that meter scale. This is basically measuring the velocity and speed in meters per second. As for how the velocity curve appears against time, this simply shows the velocity or speed which is current at that current time. Now, what you might notice looking at these curves as they appear here is that they're a little bit weird. What we can see, of course, is if we look at our actual Y channel curve there, it's all nice and smooth. We look at the Z position, and that's, coming over here nice and smooth through this exact same section there. And of course, if we look at the motion of the camera itself over here, we can see that it's really nice and smooth, steady motion there. However, what we see, both in the velocity curve here and also in the speed curve, is this sharp, sudden corner. We see similar things in other places as well, where we have this sudden dip there, or up here, where the speed begins to slow down and then suddenly rockets up like this. The speed and velocity curves contain these strange discontinuities. This seems a little unintuitive, as of course, we imagine something moving through space and it starts to slow down and then change direction and starts to speed up again. We would expect that so long as our motion path is nice and smooth and clean, something like our speed curve and velocity curve should also be nice and smooth and clean. This often confuses animators when they are trying to use speed and velocity as a way to, make sure that they've got nice, smooth, consistent motion like this as you drag your key positions around, and these strange discontinuities form at unusual places and then disappear again, and you wind up with completely straight line paths across what is actually a curved, steady motion here. It doesn't seem to make much intuitive sense, and sadly that is true. The reason for it is that speed and velocity are really just mathematical transformations on position. What they represent is a change in position over time. As such, even though an object travelling through space can't just instantaneously stop and move in a new direction, it appears that speed and velocity do undergo instantaneous changes. This is simply a consequence of the mathematics by which speed and velocity are calculated from position. It might seem that it would be nice if, the software makers would go and fix this for us so that we could get nice, smooth speed curves in order to help us judge our animation and how our motion is going over time. But unfortunately, because it's inherent in the math of how speed and velocity are calculated from position, it's not something you can easily fix. I imagine if you ask your friendly neighbourhood physicist, they'll tell you that if you could find a way for accurately representing the physical quantity known as velocity, and calculate it in a way whereby you produced a curve that didn't have such discontinuities, you would probably be able to go and collect your Nobel Prize at your convenience. And the physicist in the room here is nodding at me.
Biochemist.
You what?
I'm a biochemist.
I thought you were a physicist.
That was last year.
Was it? It shows what I know. Just go back to reading your bloody cat book.
Go back to making your videos.
I will.
Fine.
Fine. So, anyway, there we have speed and velocity curves available in the graph editor. They are useful and you can use them happily to, diagnose your motion and get a sense of how fast something is moving at any given point in time. What they are less useful for, however, is actually smoothing out your motion and using them as another way to read your graph to make sure that you've got nice, consistent ease in, ease out, fast in, fast out, and the like.